visual adaptation of the Scott Pilgrim comic series is unique in its sense of maintaining the comic style while being portrayed through a video media. While the adaptation and comic itself have slight differences between the works, many overall themes and ideas are preserved. Specifically, both the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and the comic series are heavily centered around the ideas from video game culture. The movie integrates aspects of video game culture into the comic mode by including ubiquitous elements of gaming, from increasing stats to leveling up and even special powers. The protagonist effectively takes on the position of the first-person narrator of his own video game. The use of music from many popular titles such as The Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy II is also noted. Overall, the delivery of the movie is essentially the story mode of a video game centered around Scott Pilgrim's journey from a 23-year-old man-child to a fully fledged adult through the trials and tribulations of defeating 7 evil exes in a boss fight-style scene.
The general references to video game culture start quick with a set of character ratings for each of the central figures in the movie. From there, the movie evolves into a seamless flow from one illusion to the next. From the extra life Scott picks up after his battle with Todd Ingram, to the two-player mode battle Scott fights alongside Knives, the movie is rife with small nods to video game customs. Even the coins that fall from each defeated foe in Scott's path hint at video games, where coins, health, points, and various necessities often come from fallen enemies. These small mentions of gaming canon may seem arbitrary in their use, as if just to add to the grungy 90s garage band feel of the movie, but they come straight from the comic book and function as indications of Scott's progression as the hero of his own video game, earning lives, money, and stats as he defeats each of the X's throughout the movie. The ratings at the beginning of the movie, while also being a humorous introduction to the characters, are important points of characterization, revealing much about the players and their personalities. The extra life gives Scott the second chance to learn a lesson about the power of self-respect over love, and the two-player battle that Scott fights during his second battle with Gideon is a direct result of his taking responsibility for the hardship he's caused Knives.
Not only is there a general reference to the most commonly used elements of video games, but the movie and comic also make specific references to well-known titles throughout the course of the story. For example, the scene following the fight with Gideon introduces Scott, who is a play on Dark Link from The Legend of Zelda. Similarly, Wallace yelling, "Finish him," after the call with Gideon is an overt reference to the Mortal Kombat series. The movie itself is able to make some references to specific titles which the comic is unable to do solely by the affordances of video and the limitations of comics. Certain sound sequences in the movie, such as the Legend of Zelda music during the dreams and the beginning of the film, are references which could not have been made through the comic. Both the movie and comic reference popular video games, and these connections to well-known titles make the platform of the movie and comic seem more similar to a video game from the audience's perspective.
The classic boss battle is an element seen in almost all video game story modes, from Sonic to Mario and even Street Fighter. In the Scott Pilgrim series specifically, each of the 7 X's who Scott fights represent a boss battle, both in the style of fight and the after effects. Each of the fight sequences with the X's are very dramatized and action-packed with very few still scenes. Also, following the defeat of an X, the X disintegrates into coins and gives Scott points in coins. The number of points in coins progressively increase, and the X's become increasingly harder to defeat. This characteristic is fundamental to video game campaigns with multiple bosses. The less overt reference to the bosses, which is made throughout the comic and movie, is how the battle changes Scott. Once the player is able to defeat a boss in a video game, the player has essentially proved himself to be skilled enough to take on the next stage of the game. Similarly, each time Scott defeats an X, his personality develops and he grows away from his childish persona portrayed in the beginning of the comic and movie, and into a man. The motif of Scott becoming more and more mature and respectful of himself and of his friends is the defining trait of Scott's journey throughout the book. Each time he earns an extra life, or defeats a boss, or levels up, he is shown to be developing into a stronger, more self-confident man. The gaming elements brought into the comic, and eventually into the movie adaptation, while seemingly a novelty, add a path to character development for Scott to take through the story, resulting in his transformation from underachieving 23-year-old boy into an independent, capable adult.